Well, hello everyone. I'm so excited to be here this evening and to share with you the great things that Jesus Christ is doing in Lapland. And so you've seen a little bit of a taster of what the roads looked like whilst out and about driving. And I mentioned that the part of Lapland that I've been based in for the past 4.5 years is in the very far north of Norway. But I've come with my map to show you just how big Lapland really is. So although I'm based in the very north of Norway, it also spreads across into the north of Sweden, the north of Finland, and even into the very northern parts of Russia as well. So you can see there in the map just how far north we are and how big it is. And that top county of Norway, just the Norwegian county that we're in, it's about the size of Denmark, plus those other countries that it stretches into as well. So it's a huge area with a really, really huge need. So you got a little taste of some of those snowy roads. But I think one of the most asked questions I get when people hear I'm the crazy girl that went to Lapland is, how do you deal with those long, dark winters? So in the months of December and January, we have 24 hours of darkness. But you know, when I'm answering that question honestly, I have to say that I just love that time of the year. December, of course, is coming up to Christmas, so they really put up lots of lovely lights to brighten the place up. And for about 2 hours in the day, you'll see on the screen behind me, we get the most beautiful, colourful skies, bright orange, as the sun looks as if it's trying very hard to come up over the horizon. And then it just sinks back down again, and it gets darker and darker. But you know, when I get a free day on a Saturday, I love to go cross-country skiing with this as my backdrop. I just think it's beautiful and that God made it really, really wonderfully. So this is probably what it would look like if I was going skiing or if I was driving to some of those good news clubs you saw me talking about in the video there. And I just love it. I think it's really beautiful. So my week starts on a Sunday, I mentioned in the video, where I take Sunday school in a town called Hammerfest. So that's probably the longest drive I'll have all week. It's 2 hours and it's over the mountain, and it starts at 11 a.m. So they have their church service in the church there, and I'll take the children up after we sing a song together and pray, and then I'll have the Sunday school for about an hour or a little bit over, depending on how long the pastor preaches for. So this is the lovely town of Hammerfest. Really, really beautiful. So well worth the 2-hour drive, I can assure you. And you can see some of those mountains in the background there. Those are probably the ones that I have to drive over to get to it. And this is what the roads look like now at this time of year. So in the springtime, we get all our lovely sunlight back. The sun starts to reappear at around the 21st, 22nd of January. So believe it or not, after that, we maybe need to get the sunglasses out, because whenever you've got the bright sun shining and hitting the snow, it really, really is very bright. And so the darkness isn't the problem at that time of year from about February onwards. Now, I think I mentioned avalanches at one point in that video, and that's certainly one of the possible obstacles that I might meet with whilst out and about, especially when travelling to Hammerfest, because I mentioned those mountains, a real feature in the landscape in Hammerfest. And you know, one morning, about a year ago, I set off at about 8 a.m. On my drive to Hammerfest. And you know what? I'm just going to go back to that last picture, because that's how the morning looked when I started out. I thought, what a perfect day for travelling in the car. I'll stick some praise music on, and sure, it will be a lovely drive. Well, I got out the road a little bit, and what should happen? But it started to blizzard, and the sky got really dark really quickly. And I thought, oh no, this has changed very fast. Visibility was very poor, because whenever the skies start to turn grey and the snow is falling very heavily, it really is very hard to see. And my car was, you know that little symbol that comes up on your car? I don't know if your cars have it, but we'd see it now and again in Lapland, where it shows you that your cars, the wheels are going to skid because it's very icy. Sorry, any men that are good with cars, I don't know the technical terms for all that, but I was getting a warning light showing me that the roads were icy, and I thought, right, I need to make a decision. I had the best part of 2 hours ahead of me, and the weather changed just like that, and my car was really skidding, and I just had to pray in the name of Jesus, Lord, give me wisdom. I want to get to Sunday school, but is it safe to travel, Lord? Remember, these avalanches can fall down off the mountains at any time, and sometimes you've really got to just make a decision. And put off or delay whatever outreach you're going to do and come back another time when it's safer. So I kept going and praying all the while, and then suddenly I decided I can't go any further. I could barely see. I had less than 2 hours now to get to Hammerfest. I had set off in really good time. I usually leave at 8 and Sunday school starts at 11. The journey shouldn't take any longer than 2 hours, but I was driving really slowly and carefully because remember, we have winter tyres in Lapland. I know you folks don't usually use them at home, but there it's the law to use them all year. And even with that, it was really icy and slippery. So I gave them a call. I pulled in at the side of the road, called the pastor and explained the weather conditions. And he was really understanding. They're well used with having to change plans last minute in Lapland when these things happened. And then I made the journey very slowly back into Laxelv. And just a short while later, I got a call from Ida Johnson, the lady who's been working there with CEF for over 40 years now. And she said, Sarah, I'm so glad to hear that you didn't drive to Hammerfest, because she had had word that 3 people had gotten into an accident on the road on the way to Hammerfest. So God's hand is always on me, no matter where I go, whether it's over the mountains or maybe back again to Laxelv where I live. God is always with me. And you know what? Next Sunday, the sun was probably out again, and I got back to Hammerfest. And I have to say, there's very few weeks where that happened. So praise God that his protection was on me. And here's a little photograph of some of our little cherubs, as I like to call them, in Sunday school. And so every week when one of them has a birthday, we like to bring a cake for them, and we bring some icing and things, and they decorate it after the Bible lesson. So we've about 15 children that come, so that's lots of birthdays to remember, but you know what? They don't have any trouble reminding me when it is their birthday, and so I remember to bring a cake for them. I think I mentioned in the video that after we're finished with our Sunday school lesson, and the families like to go and have a cup of coffee. They have church cafe afterwards. I usually get about 20 minutes, if I'm lucky, to gulp down my coffee and a slice of bread, and then it's off, usually to play some games. If I'm not roped into hide and seek, I'm dragged off to the local play park, which is about 5 minutes or so from the church. And sometimes people ask me, what sort of clothes do you wear in Lapland? Bearing in mind in January, it was about -30 one day. So people are always asking me that, but you know what? I put my nice clothes on for church every week, and then we all have our snow suits, which we put on over the top of them, and the children do the same. And so we can go and put our Sunday best on for church and Sunday school, and then we'll put our snow suits on afterwards, and we'll go out and play in the snow. So I'll usually stay the night in Hammerfest, usually with a friend from church, and then the next day I'll make that journey back over the mountains into Bleakley. And Bleakley is a town about 30 or 40 minutes drive from Laxelv. That's the town that I live in. So it suits perfect. It's on the way home from Hammerfest. And I'll do the Good News Club there, which is for primary school children from 5:30 to 7 p.m. Now, I wonder, is there anyone here this evening from the countryside? I definitely grew up in the country. I'm a country girl, and if there's any of you like that, I'm sure you're used to lots of long, windy lanes. Maybe you live up one yourself, or maybe you've got a few neighbours who live up some. Well, it's just the same in Lapland. And sometimes I have the job of driving some of the children home from Bleakley Club up lots of long, windy lanes, sometimes in the dark season, and very often in the snow. So something you've always got to have with you in the back of your car is a shovel, so that you can dig your way out if you happen to get stuck. And if you don't have a shovel, well, one thing that will always be in my car is a pair of skis. And believe you me, I've been in the situation before where I've had nothing else but a pair of skis, and I've even had to use them to take myself out of a few situations. But thankfully, folks in Lapland are very friendly, and I can tell you any time that I've got stuck in one of those big long lanes that maybe haven't been cleared from snow just yet, while dropping the kids off, there's always someone to help me. Maybe the mum or dad will come and give me a push and a shovel out, or if someone's driving past on the road and they see me in my reflective jacket and the dark weather shoveling snow, they'll stop and offer to help. So I'm never stuck. So Tuesday is then Good News Club in Laxelv, and we would usually run that in a little mission house, which is just over the road from the local primary school, and we then just run that from 2 to 4 p.m, that Good News Club. This is one of our better attended clubs, and we have about 20 or so children that go there, and they all come in absolutely ravenous. So we usually try and feed them first, and then we give them their Bible lesson afterwards. Now, I mentioned that I live in Laxelv. So you're probably thinking, right, well, Good News Club in Laxelv, there'd be no problem driving there. Well, this is a picture of my car one day when we had a lot of snow. And that, on days like that, I usually like to go and drive over to the local primary school. If it's very blizzardy or very bad weather, I go and I sit with my big 7-seater car and I cram as many children in, or usually the ones that get to me first, and drive them over so they're not going over in very blizzardy or windy weather. So one day when we'd had this much snow and then we were getting more snow, so remember visibility was poor, I thought, oh, I'm not going to make those wee angels walk over in that weather. So I drove across the road in my car and sat and waited on them. And I think there wasn't quite, the car wasn't quite full, but I think there was about 5 or 6 crammed in anyway. And everything was just white. White clouds in the sky, white snow falling, and then just masses of snow all around me. Now, there was one big flat square where the snowplough man had been to clear snow out of the way where the parents would park. So you're probably thinking, brilliant. Well, even Sarah couldn't get that wrong. Sarah surely parked her car in the big flat square that the snowplough man had made, which she did. And then didn't I reverse back when I was taking the children out into a huge big area of snow, like what you see on the screen, which hadn't been cleared. Well, I blame it on the visibility, but those who know me would probably also blame it on my reversing skills. So probably a combination of both. But I was well and truly stuck. And the time was going on, and I thought, oh my goodness, Ida and the others will be wondering, where is that girl? She's only across the road collecting a few kids. What's taking her so long? Well, I couldn't get out. I was ramming my foot down on the pedals, and I just couldn't. Well, suddenly I felt a big thump on the back of the car, and I looked round, and who was it? But it was the local postman who happened to be there collecting some of his children from school. And he said, you just floor it. I've got my shovel out and I'll have you out in no time. And so I was. So I did say folks are very friendly in Lapland, and they are. They'll always help you. They'll never see you stuck, no matter how bad your reversing is. And I believe I arrived back in time for club just as they were serving food. I mentioned we have that before, the Bible lesson. Now, I said on the 21st of January, we get our sunshine back. And so they have a lovely tradition in Lapland that they bake something called solboller, which I suppose we would translate as sunshine buns. So they're lovely, freshly baked buns with a little bit of vanilla cream in the middle, representing the sun. And that's a tradition we usually keep in Lapland because we're so happy it comes back again. And then that takes us to Thursday. So Thursday I have Tweens Club, and Tweens Club runs again in Laxelv in the little mission hall from 12 to 2. And so when we talk about tweens, we mean 10 to 12-year-olds. And mostly girls are coming to this club. We get a few boys now and again as well. About 20 or so come each week and are hearing the gospel. And then after I'm done with doing my club there, I then drive to a town called Burselv. And Burselv is about 40 minutes in another direction outside of Laxelv. And we do a Good News Club there from 5:30 to 7 p.m. And then straight after, we'd have teens clubs for the older one. That's just a picture of the Burselv bunch. And I really wanted to draw your attention to Jacob. Jacob is one of the older ones. He's from Thailand. I think he's in the purple jacket there, sitting in the picture. I think this was a picture taken before Christmas, and they were decorating gingerbread men. So he's the one looking down very intently at his creation with the purple jacket on. Jacob is 16 years old, and he always comes along to Good News Club as a leader and as a helper, and then stays behind for our teens club afterwards. But you know, he doesn't live in Burselv, he actually lives in Laxelv, but he knows some of the boys in Burselv, and so every week he comes along and puts up with my driving all the way to Burselv in my big 7-seater, and he helps out with the Good News Club and then stays on as well for the teens club. But would you please pray for Jacob? He is a Christian, and he does have a bit of a hard time at school. He's the only Christian in school, and he's such a witness and such a light. And it's not easy when he's getting bullied for that. But I know you'll be praying for him, and that he'll know the Lord's help, and that Jesus will use him as a witness to those boys and an influence for good, rather than them bullying him. Then we make it to Friday, and I'm a very happy girl when I get to Friday, because I've only one more club, and then the next morning is Saturday, and I get to go skiing. But I love Friday evenings as well, because I get to spend Friday evenings with our teenagers from 7 p.m. till 10 p.m. at our teens club, and again, that's in Laxelv Mission Hall. So there's our teenagers, and we've quite a big group. We can have up to 30 that come to our teens club as well. We sometimes have teens weekends. We usually try to have one in October and then one in May or June as well, sort of fitting it in around whenever it suits the kids, because that's also exams time. And this is a picture of our teens weekend back in October. And we got a group of students from a Bible college that came over to Laxelv to help us run that. So that Bible college is in Tromsø. And you know, it's about a 7 or 8 hour drive. So Tromsø is definitely still in Lapland, but it's a long journey all the same. So you're getting a picture for how big the place is. So they would drive down and help us with that. With a really big group of about 20 or so that came back in the autumn there, 20 students to help with the running of this weekend. And you know, 100 teenagers came all together and heard the good news. So that's really something I would encourage you to keep praying for, is that we keep getting really good help, not just now and again for a weekend, although we're really appreciative of that, but even that local Christians in Laxelv would really have a desire to help us each and every week with the good news clubs that are running each week and the teens clubs as well. And so I mentioned mission weeks in my video as well. So when I'm not at Good News clubs and teens clubs, I try and use any spare weeks I have to travel much further afield to some of the towns listed there. I don't expect you to remember all those names, but please pray for those mission weeks. Firstly, that I'd find the time to do them. I traditionally would have ran them in the autumn time before, but I mentioned that we don't always have the help that we would like at these Good News clubs, and since we can't split me in two, we need to find someone that's willing to take over the clubs while I'm travelling and doing these mission weeks, and they can keep those clubs running, because there's about 5 of them listed on the screen there, and we can't stop the clubs for 5 weeks, so we need someone that would be able to take over them for us. Lots of helpers, people to take the Bible lesson, and then people to help out with the activities and watching the children as well. The bottom one on the list there, Karashock, has particularly been quite a difficult place to get into the past number of years. We can't get a church to run our Good News clubs from. We can't seem to get any access into any of the churches there. Now, there's a lady, you'll see her on the screen now. Her name is Olaug. And Olaug used to work in the Lutheran church in Karashock, the village I mentioned. And she speaks Sami. So Karashock is almost predominantly Sami people living there, so an indigenous group of people, indigenous to Lapland, who have their own language. So I speak Norwegian. I learned that when I came there. Everybody understands Norwegian, but the Sami people have their own language, Sami, and they all speak that as well. And really, when you go into a town like Karasjok that is almost 100% Sami people, that's their first language, and Norwegian is their second. So Olaug married a reindeer farmer many years ago, and she worked in the local Lutheran church for a number of years as a youth minister. As a children's minister there. And although she isn't working in the church any longer, and we're actually no longer allowed into that Lutheran church to do any kind of outreach, Olaug has always been with me when I've attempted to do any more outreach in Karasjok, and I really need her with me since I don't speak Sami. It's really important that I've got someone who knows the people and who knows the language. So we did manage to get a holiday Bible club up and running in Karasjok back in September. The children got a week off school the last week in September. That was their autumn break. And we went ahead and we did a holiday Bible club. Now, since we're not getting into the church, we're really finding it hard to get contact with people in Karasjok. We're really not allowed to go into schools at all to teach the gospel. And they're even really, really reluctant to advertise it for us. The best we can do is stand outside the school gates and hand out invitations. But we're really not too welcome there either. While we did try and do that to advertise this holiday Bible club we ran, the teachers kept telling us to move back, and we really felt that we weren't welcome there at all. So after a while, we really just had to leave. We gave out what invitations we could, and then we went on. So our holiday Bible club was 3 days. It ran from 9 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon. And Olaug came with lots of lovely things to make for breakfast, lots of games. Twister was one of them on the first day, and we sat and we waited. And we really just thought that no one was going to appear. But finally, a couple of hours at the very end of the day, one little girl came along. And she was a little bit shy at first, but we managed to get her out of her shell with a game of Twister, and she sat as good as gold for the Bible lesson. Second day came, and we thought, would this poor little girl, her name was Ada, would she even dare to come back? I mean, she was all on her own for those couple of hours yesterday. We don't know if anyone else is going to come. And we sat and we waited again, and sure enough, Ada came back. And the first thing she asked to do was to play a game of Twister. So we played that for a little while, and then we had our Bible lesson. And then Ada decided she wanted to do some colouring in. So while she was colouring in, Olaug went into the kitchen of where we were running our holiday Bible club to get the lunch ready. And then what did I hear but a shriek, "Oh goodness, come in, there's a flood in here." I thought, what's going on? Ran into the kitchen and saw floods of water. The dishwasher had broken down mid-cycle. So the hunt for a plug to switch it off started, and we could not find anywhere to unplug it or to make the dishwasher stop. So it kept going in this cycle while spilling out more and more water, and the entire kitchen was just flooded. And it was now starting to come down the steps into the main room where we were having our club. So Olaug got the mop out. I grabbed a bucket, and she mopped the water towards me, and I tried to catch it in the bucket as it was coming down off the top step onto the floor. And the whole time, Ada sat very quietly, colouring in as if nothing had happened. So finally, we managed to catch Olaug's husband. We called him on the phone, and he's very handy with these sort of things. Sorry, I forgot to mention, we were running this holiday Bible club in an old petrol station, which Olaug and her family had bought, and they now use it for outreach and to run things in the community. So he managed to come over, and he got the dishwasher stopped, and so the flooding then stopped too. Well, as if things couldn't have gotten any worse, we thought, goodness me, poor Ada will be wanting to go home. But she sat and coloured throughout, and just as that mess was cleared up, another little girl arrived right after we got the flooding stopped. And so we'd already had our Bible lesson that morning, but we thought we'd sit down, have a bite of lunch, and then we had a missionary story afterwards. And then we got to our third day, and not only did Ada and this other little girl turn up, but a third girl came as well. So praise God, and Oleg knew all of these girls and their families. So she was then able to tell them, look, we'd really love to get a weekly Good News Club running in Carashock. Here is where we'd hold it in this building, so you know where it is. Would you be interested in coming? And these mums gave very positive feedback. They were very willing to come. They even told us which evenings they had after school activities on and which evenings they would be free. And we really were ready to get that club up and running. And then sadly, Oleg had some difficult news. She found out that her eldest daughter was going through a separation in her marriage. And her eldest daughter is Christian. I don't know about her husband, but the difficulty of that was very stressful on Oleg. And she's asked me to tell you this so that you would pray for her. So pray for her and pray for her eldest daughter and her husband. And they have 2 children as well. So it's a difficult time for them. And Oleg just felt with all this going on that she wasn't quite ready to do a weekly Good News Club. And since I've no other helpers, I'm just waiting on Oleg to feel a bit better. And when she's ready, we'll be ready to rock and roll with that Good News Club. And we at least have 3 little girls that want to come along. So that takes us to summertime. And in summertime, we'll have our camps. So our first camp is the last week in June, and that's for primary age school children. And then straight after that, the first week of July, we'll get going with our teens camp. So this is just a picture of our children's camp last year. And last year we had a guy called John McCullough with us, and he brought his wife along. And we find it really hard to get male helpers for our camps in Lapland. So if you fit that description, maybe you'd like to come along this year to camp in Lapland. So just give me a shout. I'll be about later this evening if you fit that description and you'd like to come and help us out at our children's camp. Teens camp, we have slightly fewer numbers. We had about 20 or so children that came to the children's camp last year. And then at teens camp, we had a group of about 5 girls. So very small. So please pray that all of those girls would come back to teens club or camp this year, and that would get some more that would come as well, so they could hear the gospel. And then finally, just a summary of prayer points. And while I remember, I think I'll just take this chance to say thank you to all of those who are warfaring for Lapland and all those who support it in many different ways. Your prayers make a huge difference. I love to remind people that it can honestly change where people spend eternity. So you'll see the first point up there is salvation. Before Christmas, I had a phone call from a really good friend she's from the Philippines, and we both studied Norwegian together. We did a Norwegian course together when I first moved to Lapland, and she's married to a Norwegian man. And he had some very sad news about a year ago. He was very terminally ill with cancer. And, I would say to my friend every now and then, I'm worried. I'm worried where your husband will spend eternity. Have you told him to trust the Lord Jesus? And she would say, no, he's not ready for that. He'll call the priest of the local Lutheran church, and he'll come and pray with him when he's ready. So I just let it be. And then before Christmas, a few days before Christmas, I got a phone call from my friend, and she said, I know my husband is very near his time. Would you come and pray with him? I was so shocked. So I said, of course, it was an evening I didn't have any club. I went over to the house, and he was too weak to speak, but he could just nod his head and smile. And so I just told him, there's a mansion waiting for you in heaven if you'll put your trust in Jesus. If you'll accept what he did for you on the cross, tell him you're sorry, he'll forgive you. And then you'll spend eternity with Jesus. And although he couldn't really speak much, his eyes filled with peace, and he smiled and nodded along with me. Now, about a week or so later, I got the news that he actually passed away. But God opened a door there to share the love of Jesus with him, and there's every chance that he's in heaven today because he heard the gospel, and I did see that peace come over him as he received it. So you keep praying because it really changes where people will spend eternity. And I've mentioned helpers tonight. We need volunteers at clubs, and we need full-time workers in CEF. We really do. Such a big, big, big part of the world, and so in need of the gospel. You pray, and we know the Lord Jesus will send. And then finally, opposition. I've mentioned in places like Karashock, we can't even get into the church to share the gospel. Haven't said so much about the Sami people and their roots in a religion called shamanism. Shamanism is really the worship of nature, and that is really a bit of a stronghold, really, amongst the Sami people. It's really everywhere, you know. It's not just in places like Karashock, but I even know of people that are into it in my village. I'm a cup half full kind of girl. So although I have sensed a lot of opposition over the past 4.5 years that I've spent in Lapland, I know it's because the devil is terrified, that Jesus is making his presence known there, that children are hearing the gospel every single week, and even mummies and daddies as well. Please pray against that opposition that we feel, and pray that the gospel will continue being spread in Lapland. It will change where people spend eternity. Just wanted to show you a picture. I mentioned helpers and workers. This is Kirsty. It might be a face that some of you recognise. She's a really good friend of Ida's, but she's also been our treasurer with CEF in Lapland for many, many years. Kirsty has had really bad arthritis for many, many years. For as long as I've known her, she's gotten about with a crutch. Not the easiest to do in a really icy, snowy place like Lapland, but it was never a bother to our Kirsty. And she would come into the office several times a week on her crutch, drove herself there and all, and she would do our finances for us. She had an operation for a hip replacement just before Christmas, and sadly, poor Kirsty's health has really declined. She's no longer able to get about in that crutch and is now in a wheelchair almost all of the time, and so she can no longer get to our office, but she's so faithful. We would take all the receipts and all the numbers that she needs to do the finances to her at home, and she sits at home and does them for us there. So would you please pray for Kirsty, that she'll know the Lord's strength, and that she will improve. She gets physio every week, but she still hasn't been able to walk very far distances outside of her apartment, and a wheelchair isn't great for getting about in Lapland either. So please pray for her, that she will feel the benefit of her physio and start to get her strength back. And she's also asked that we pray for somebody new to come on and take over the finances. So please pray for that as well. And then finally, I just wanted to finish with a verse that really encourages me. And it's found in Matthew 9:37-38. Then saith he unto his disciples, the harvest truly is plenteous, but the labourers are few. Pray ye therefore the Lord of the harvest, that he will send forth labourers into his harvest. That's something I know you prayer warriors are praying very frequently for all the vacant counties here in Northern Ireland and in the south, and for Lapland. So thank you so much for listening to me babble on about my favourite subject ever, and thank you for praying for me as well. God bless.